Hey everybody, Rob Maurer here. Welcome back to Tesla Daily. Today we are talking about various Elon Musk meetings. We've got a report on Project Dojo and a major production milestone for Tesla amongst a few other items. All right, looking at the stock, Tesla not quite as strong as the beginning of last week, I think was when we had a nice day from the Morgan Stanley increase. This week starting off down 3.3%, closing at $265.28. The Nasdaq basically flat on the day today. We did have a report, an analyst report today as well, or over the weekend, from Goldman Sachs. They've kept their price target at $275, kept their neutral rating on the stock, but they did cut their estimates based off of their assessment of average selling prices, noting the reduction that we've previously talked about on Model S and Model X. They did say that some of that will be offset by Highland, but probably not early off, or probably not impactful at least to the third quarter. So anyway, they've cut their full year estimates from $3 of earnings per share to $2.90 now, $2.90 now, and for next year from $4.25 to $4.15 based off of those lower average selling prices. So nothing too new that we haven't really talked about, but just them chiming in and maybe had an impact on the stock today. All right, getting into the milestone for Tesla. Tesla's announced over the weekend that they have produced their 5 millionth car in the history of the company. This comes just over 6 months after Tesla produced their 4 millionth vehicle. You can see a photo here of the 5 millionth vehicle. Looks like the 5 millionth did turn out to be a Highland Model 3, which is nice to see. So like I said, the 4 millionth vehicle that was announced by Tesla to have been produced on March 1st, earlier this year. So just over, again, 6 months since that vehicle was produced, which is pretty impressive to see. Obviously, that puts Tesla close to a 2 million per year run rate on production. A little bit below that, but obviously we've had some impact probably from the Highland switchover and things of that nature. I just want to reflect on it a bit, though, because it was only back in March of 2020 where Tesla announced that they had produced their 1 millionth car. So essentially over a decade to produce that first million vehicles. And now, 6 months after hitting 4 million, we're hitting another million, up to 5 million. So incredibly exciting to see this progress. Obviously, whenever we get these updates, I always like to back into what this might mean for production for the quarter. Tesla's made it a little bit trickier this time around, unfortunately for us, with that math, because they did say this week, with the rate of production that Tesla is at this week, could mean anywhere from September 10th to September 16th. And that gives us, 30,000+ vehicles that sort of arrange for us, which is probably close enough to what we would have forecasted anyway. So unfortunately, it doesn't tell us a whole lot. And this quarter specifically in September, there is a lot of question on what the September production will be, specifically because of Highland again. So unfortunately, it doesn't give us quite as much as we usually would see. I'd love to run through the math on it, but just probably not worth it with this update, with the lack of specificity on the date. Still, we'll come back to that and just kind of keep it in mind in our back pocket when we do head into the production and delivery numbers in a couple of weeks. All right, moving on to the update on Project Dojo, or rather the report on Project Dojo at least. This is a report out of China that is saying that Tesla is planning to significantly increase their orders for Dojo chips from TSMC. So a little bit of, I think confusion on this reporting today. So obviously sometimes things get lost in translation, and that's very much possible in this case. But reading through this article, it's talking about the D1 chip produced by TSMC using their 7 nanometer facility. They say that next year the volume produced by TSMC for the Dojo purposes, have been increased to 10,000 pieces. So they say doubled here, and they say that orders will continue to increase from that rate. So I think some people have interpreted this as Tesla increasing their previous orders, but I think what this report is saying is that the orders that they have for 2023, 2024, and then 2025 are increasing year over year rather than increasing from the previous levels that Tesla had ordered. Just kind of reading through it again, it says, Tesla, according to Industry Conversation, has ordered nearly 10,000 of these for next year. They say that if it increases to 10,000, it will double its growth. If it continues to expand chip usage in 2025, the volume will continue to increase. They say that Tesla aims to produce about 5,000 of these chips at TSMC this year. So based off of the context, again, translation can be, fudge the message a little bit, but for me, it seems like the report is that they are planning to kind of increase this in a way that's close to doubling here, into 2023 and 2024. So that is still very exciting, but I don't know if we went back to that graph that we looked at a few times where Tesla kind of mapped out their plans for their sort of compute capabilities over the next 12 months. I don't think that this would materially increase those. I think this is just sort of mapping that out with supply chain reports. So still exciting to hear, but again, I don't think anything necessarily too new that we didn't already anticipate, at least. All right, getting into some other things, kind of a few meetings and updates from Elon today. First is he did meet with the Prime Minister of Israel, and they discussed a number of topics. They actually had a little bit of a presentation here, a summit with just primarily focused on artificial intelligence. So Elon's got that on his profile if you want to check that out on X. For our purposes, though, kind of interesting, Elon did give them a tour of one of the facilities. They did check, I think it was Giga Texas. They did check out the Cybertruck, as we can see here. Nice shot of the wiper there in front. Probably can see the front bumper camera there as well. And this looks to be a release candidate vehicle, or maybe even a production candidate vehicle. There was actually even a video posted that walked through a little bit of the tour that they were taking and gave us a couple of good looks at the interior of the Cybertruck, maybe a little bit closer than we have seen before. And again, probably a production candidate because we're now seeing the LED interior lighting like we have seen with Highland on this version of the Cybertruck. So gives us a nice look at that, the really nice giant screen here in the middle, but otherwise probably not too surprising from what we have seen so far, just a nice look at how it's coming along. The other meeting that Elon had was with the president of Turkey. Sounds like there are, like we have had a lot of reports on this year, conversations between Elon and foreign government leadership about investments from Tesla. The Turkish Communications Directorate said that Elon said that many suppliers in Turkey are already working with Tesla and that Turkey was among the most important candidates for its next factory. Whether that means car factory, gigafactory, something of that nature, possibly. Could also mean an energy factory like we have seen Tesla announce for Shanghai. So obviously a lot of these conversations ongoing, and hopefully we'll see what these conversations lead to relatively soon. But I would imagine that a lot of these are kind of just having conversations to see what the best opportunity is and make a decision from there. Now, there's also reports today from the Wall Street Journal that Tesla was in early talks with Saudi Arabia for an EV factory. Obviously, we know Lucid is going down that path with the investment that they've received from Saudi Arabia. But Elon saying on X, yet another utterly false article from the Wall Street Journal. So thankfully, we don't have to spend too much time discussing that possibility since Elon has come out and denied that report. All right, next, a nice update here from Tesla North America on X. They are saying that Hertz rentals in the US now allow full Tesla app access. So that means you can use the app features such as phone unlock, remote preconditioning, tracking the charge status, any update that you would see normally on the phone. And if you have your profile saved to the cloud via the Tesla app and interface, then you can actually load that into the Hertz vehicle seamlessly once you connect your phone. It just pops up a QR code here to connect when you start your rental off. So I think this is really nice. It's going to make people a lot more, hopefully, familiar with how the full Tesla experience works. Phone key is obviously a pretty critical resource in that experience. So this should make it nice. And for any Tesla owners that already have vehicles, having the capability to rent a Tesla from Hertz when you're traveling or something like that, and immediately load in all your settings is just going to make that even more convenient. So nice to see that that feature has now been integrated. I'm sure Tesla and Hertz have been working to get that up and running since that sort of big announcement that we had. I think that was last year, but may have even been longer ago at this point. All right, quick one here. This is from the Brighter with Herbert channel. They had a video today discussing a note from Deutsche Bank, a couple of updates that we'll talk about. I did just want to note that this note is from September 6th. So if you do see this, just context-wise, this note's been out for a while, so nothing that should be moving anything in the market today. But I don't think it was very widely publicized at the time. So just a few details since they've gone through the full note that I noticed here. They did, Deutsche Bank did talk about Highland. They said that Tesla, after meeting with Deutsche Bank, said that, or their takeaway after meeting with Tesla on this was that it's reasonable to assume that Highland will cost less to produce. Obviously, that would be great news than with the higher prices that we're currently seeing on Highland. Obviously, over time, we might see that pricing change and it might come down. But no surprise, it is nice to hear some sort of a little bit of a confirmation that pricing or the cost basis rather would be lower after this update. They also confirmed that Tesla will not be using gigacastings. We kind of already determined that from the imagery that we had seen online, but confirmation of that. They also said that Berlin is actually going to ramp to 375,000 vehicles per year rather than 500,000, at least in this sort of initial phase. Obviously, we've talked about the expansion that Tesla has planned, so I assume that that would go well beyond that at some point, probably with the next generation platform. But at least for Model Y, it sounds like that's going to go only up to 375,000. I guess that is due to the labor costs from overnight shifts being prohibitively expensive due to regulatory reasons in Europe. So basically 75% of the sort of initial phase 1 capacity seems to be what they're looking at right now. Also on FSD, Elon has already previously commented on this, but apparently there is interest from other OEMs to eventually license FSD, and that is something that Tesla is sort of working on developing. So obviously if something like that happened, that would be huge. We've seen just kind of the impact following the announcements on the supercharger network, how that affected the stock. So I think if FSD were to go down that path as well at some point, there'd probably be an even more significant reaction in the markets. So keep an eye out for more news on that. Last few things today, we have 2 lawsuit updates. The first is that California is actually suing some of the biggest companies in the world, biggest oil companies in the world, Exxon, Shell, BP, Phillips, Chevron, etc. Or I think just those 5 actually, but suing them for basically saying that there was knowledge of the business, the impact of their businesses on climate change that they had and would intentionally withheld or misled the public about over multiple decades. So filing a suit about that. This is a civil case, and the goal of the case is to create an abatement fund funded by these companies to help offset some of those changes to climate. So it'll be interesting to follow. Obviously, we've seen the impact of legislation and things like that in California. Not, again, this is a civil case, but if this fund did materialize at some point, California could direct those funds towards things like electric vehicles, etc., which may ultimately have an impact on Tesla. So pretty early stage at this point, but definitely an important case and one to keep an eye on. And then we talked previously about the DOJ filing a suit against SpaceX for saying that they were discriminating against non-US residents, specifically refugees or asylees. SpaceX, of course, has hiring restrictions in some cases. So, we've talked about how it kind of puts them in a tricky situation. SpaceX is arguing back against this, saying that there was no discrimination, and basically countersuing the Department of Justice on this. So, of course, not surprising to see SpaceX push back on that. A couple of interesting details from the filing. The company in the suit says that they employ more than 13,000 people in the United States right now. And just kind of a recruiting note, they said that they had advertised specifically in Starbase almost 1,500 positions and received about 72,000 applicants for those positions over this period of time where the DOJ was looking at. So a little bit lagging at this point, since that's already more than a year ago, the end of this period, but just kind of shows, the hiring that Tesla's, or the hiring that SpaceX has done and is doing in Starbase. All right, just a quick look at the calendar, because again, we do have the FOMC meeting coming up this week. We've talked about this a couple of times already, but that'll be midday on Wednesday, something to keep an eye on. And then the Boring Company finally has announced, or, finally for today, the Boring Company has announced that they will be holding an engineering demo day on September 28th at their headquarters in Texas. So something to keep an eye on. And if you're interested in that, you can find more details at the Boring Company's website. So wanted to pass that along as well. But that'll wrap it up for today. So as always, thank you for listening. Make sure you're subscribed and signed up for notifications. You can also find me on X at Tesla Podcast. And we'll see you tomorrow for the Tuesday, September 19th episode of Tesla Daily. Thank you.